Hi everybody. So to be honest, I don't know of a single child who isn't absolutely fascinated with fossils and dinosaurs. In fact, when I think about it, most adults are. Britain, which can be considered to be the birthplace of paleontology, has some world-class fossil sites. Of course, one of these is an area on the south coast of England known as the Jurassic Coast. 150 million years ago, the land was ruled by dinosaurs like the T-Rex. But of course, there were dinosaurs in the sea, and these were sea monsters in the truest sense of sea monster. And one of these giant sea monsters was discovered there quite recently at Kimmeridge Bay in Dorset. So to my mind, there's nothing more exciting than cracking open a rock and discovering something like this. And of course, the discovery of the giant sea monster, well, that's an adventure in itself. Embedded in the rocks, halfway up a cliff, they found the skull of a pliosaur. A pliosaur was an apex predator that lived around 155 million years ago. It was a huge animal, somewhere in the region of 10 to 15 metres long, which is about as long as 2 double-decker buses. The skull they found was 6 feet 5 inches or 1.96 metres long. The animal it came from probably weighed around 45 tonnes, which is almost 100,000 pounds. And its distinguishing characteristics are a short neck with elongated head, and more importantly, large hind flippers to complement the fore flippers, so it had 4 flippers in total. They were carnivorous with a crushing bite grip, about 2.5 times that of a great white shark. The long powerful jaws carried many sharp triangular teeth, and their prey probably included fish, sharks, ichthyosaurus, dinosaurs and other pliosaurs. With bulk, strength and great weapons in its spear-like teeth, you would think that this would be enough to maintain the pliosaur as an apex predator. But strangely enough for predators, most hunts fail. Something like 9 out of 10 hunts don't succeed, with 1 out of 10 being successful, because one other key element is necessary, and that is speed. And the big question has been, how did such a massive beast like the pliosaur propel itself through the water with anything like the speed and agility it would need in order to be successful? Today, the closest match to a pliosaur flipper is in the penguin. When a penguin's underwater, it moves like a rocket. It can swim faster than a man can run, up to speeds of 20 miles an hour. Under slow motion, what is revealed that penguins swim by using their flippers like the wings of a bird. And by twisting their wings as they flap, they can propel themselves forward on the upstroke and on the downstroke. But pliosaurs, of course, don't have 2, they have 4 in 2 sets. So how do they interact with each other? To get an idea of how that might work, we can look at something that we're all familiar with, the flight of geese. It turns out that when large birds flap their wings, a circulation of air is generated. The portion that is rising is called the upwash, where the portion that is sinking is called the downwash. The lift provided by upwash is generated behind and to the outside of the leading bird, so that becomes the place where the following birds hang out, reducing the work that they have to do, as they're using the mechanically generated cushion of air from the lead bird. To maximise the lift, not only do the birds get in line, but they also flap their wings at the same time as the lead bird. If they drift into the downwash, directly behind the leading bird, they flap at precisely opposite times, which is thought to reduce the effect of downwash for the following birds. Since the lead bird is the one doing the most work, leaders rotate positions to conserve energy, and this distributes the workload amongst the whole flock. In terms of pliosaurs, this effect has been extensively studied by Dr. Luke Muscat from the University of Southampton in his research paper, The 4-Flipper Swimming Method of Pliosaurs Enabled Efficient and Effective Locomotion. What Dr. Muscat found was that the figure of 8 motion, which is found in turtles as well as bees and penguins, created vortexes where the following pairs of fins avoided the vortex with their swimming motion, and this gave them an increase in efficiency and led to a 50% increase in thrust and a 50% increase in efficiency, which is huge, and was probably one of the major factors that contributed to the position that the Pliosaur occupied as an apex predator. Now, I for one find all of that super interesting in and of itself. itself. But what holds the water holds the air, and this is found in birds, beasts, and even insects. So it does beg the question, for me at least, is the same thing true for something like a wind turbine? Well, turns out it is. Normally, with a rotor like this, then you're limited by the Betz limit. There's nothing you can do about it, it's just the physics of everything. And everybody is searching for a way to beat the Betz limit because you can improve the efficiency of a wind turbine. You'll never do it with just a rotor like that. But you can do it. You can do it if you do things like use a duct, because a duct collects a greater area of wind, and so you are effectively using a larger blade, if you like, and so it looks like you're beating it. Another way of beating it is with something like this, a dual rotor. These dual rotors are so efficient that they're in fact the hot topic in wind research at the moment. If you put in dual rotor wind turbine into a Google search, you'll find a lot of information about this particular kind of wind turbine and how good it really is. Oh, hey. Yeah, that's lighting. Wow. You can, that is wow. Look at that, that's lighting beautifully actually. Whoa. Man, that's really cool. Isn't that lovely? That's beautiful. It is actually, yeah. So that came from pliosaurs, and who would have thought it? But it just goes to show really that inspiration is found absolutely everywhere, even in things that you don't think are going to be any use to you. So look, that's the answer. If you want something, look around you, because it's amazing how these solutions have already been found. We just forget to look. I don't know if you remember this. It's the Owind wind turbine that won the James Dyson Award in 2018. It's certainly an innovative piece of technology designed to harness wind energy in urban environments. Unlike traditional turbines, which typically require steady unidirectional wind flow to generate, the Owind turbine is specifically shaped to capture wind from any direction, and of course that makes it ideal for urban settings where wind patterns are often turbulent and unpredictable. Its spherical structure and unique design is the result of the research and creativity of Nicholas Orellana and Yassine Nourani, two students from Lancaster University. They say that their inspiration came from observing how hurricanes and whirlwinds move in a spherical pattern rather than a linear one, and this observation led them to develop a turbine that could capture wind energy from all directions. After that, everything went a bit quiet, as these things often do, but it didn't go away. The guys worked on it in the background, and they're about to bring it out as a product, and they're going to do that through a crowdfunding campaign, and of course that has led to a resurgence of interest, including with myself. So I had to dig around and I came up with their patent. And here it is US Patent 2021/0340950A1. And if we look at the basic structure, what we can see is just a tetrahedron. It's 4 triangles set against each other, so a triangular-based pyramid if you like. And then there are these faces, face A, B, C and D, set in that tetrahedron to create the Owind. If we split them apart as in figure 5, we can see that they are just 2 triangles interlocking with each other. The big deal is what makes up those triangles, and it turns out it's actually 2 layers. The first layer is flat, as you can see in part A of the figure, with a slice out of one corner, and then those fingers B lie on A to create a channel for the wind. Then there's a cup C, which is like a conic section, over the top of those, and then we get a layer of fingers D overlaying with the surface E. And on the fingers D, what we've got is that the side nearest the arrow is smaller than the side facing the other way. So there are 2 key things to the Owind: the control of the wind direction using the channels in 2 layers, and the Venturi effect from making one opening bigger than the other. Face A and B differs from face C and D, but you make up those faces as seen in that diagram, and then you put them together as two triangles like this, and then you interlock the triangles with each other to form the O-wind tetrahedron. And I did exactly that on Tinkercad to produce this, which is a copy of the O-wind from that patent. And here it is printed off. Now in the bottom I put a steel bar because it has an axis of rotation, if you remember the patent, and that axis is through that section there and that section there. So there's a bit of 8mm steel bar, and the foot has two 22mm by 8mm by 7mm skater bearings in there, which is 608. So that's in the foot, so that drops in there. And then what we've got is a hairdryer. Now, this won't generate by itself. It's just a wind capture device. Of course, we need the actual generator to bolt to it to make it a generator. But the whole thing about the O-wind is its ability to capture wind from any direction and turn in one single axis of rotation. So we've got it here, we've got a hairdryer. What we're going to do is point the hairdryer at various bits and see if it spins in one direction or not. Okay, that was pretty cool, hey? It does what it said on the box, and it's no surprise if you think about it, because these are little fins directing the air in one direction. It's bigger one side, narrower than the other, so it's going to have only one axis of rotation. So it certainly does what it says it will do. Now, you might want to give a very close look to the product that they're actually launching, and you'll see there's been some significant design changes. One thing is the air no longer passes through on that top layer. It seems to be closed off. Now, I'm not sure if it's being redirected, but certainly it's being closed off from exiting on the other side of the ball. They've maintained those fins at the top and the bottom for the rotational direction of the air, but there's been a significant change that's worth a better look into and perhaps a play around with in order to discover what it is that they've done. Anyway, it may be that the true genius of the O-wind has got very little to do with these. As I say, it looks like they're closing them off, in which case it's not much different to an ordinary Savonius. But the true genius could well be this section here, where it sits on the top. Remember, that section bows around to act like a little thrust, and that could well be the core of the turbine. Anyway, I thought I would run up a model because it's coming up again. There's been lots of reports on it, and some are claiming 700 times better than solar. Not sure if that is true or not, but it's certainly an interesting design. Thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to like and subscribe. I have to say, I think that we have as a world some very curious priorities. I mean, take these things for example. They're just shopping trolleys. You buy one of these for somewhere between £100 and £125 retail, so you can bet your bottom dollar the supermarkets are probably paying half, if not less than that, for shopping trolleys. And it's why so many get abandoned, because it's cheaper for the supermarket to replace a shopping trolley with a new shopping trolley rather than send somebody out to go and collect the old ones, and they pile up like a curse. Now, this is not something that has escaped lots of people's notice, and they get reused in lots of different ways. One way that I particularly liked was this. It's a shopping trolley wheelchair, and it was in Thailand. Because in Thailand, it's estimated there are something like 80,000 disabled people without access to mobility, and yet shopping trolleys litter the street. And so an adventurous designer turned these into wheelchairs, and I thought that was actually really rather awesome and a great way of using something that we basically don't think about. And then there's another thing that's come to mind recently, and that is China's waste bicycles. China has a bicycle share scheme. Because loads of cities jumped in on this, they have millions of bicycles that they're basically using once or throwing away, or they just never get used, and they stack up in car parks all over China. And even now you can buy a tricycle from China for about £180 or so, brand new. These are absolute peanuts when it comes to the cost of production, the cost of purchasing something, and yet Something like mobility can cost you thousands of pounds. There's 80,000 estimated in Thailand. How many people around the world have no access to mobility, and yet we continue to throw away great big heaps of stuff that is perfectly usable, but the product of some very odd priorities.
I have a love for these things as it happens, because I just think they're awesome and they're so easy to get hold of. You can buy them or find them or whatever it is you want to do. I bought this one. And what we're going to do is chop it up. So I've removed the back child seat, and you need about 50 centimetres to sit on, so just measure up 50 centimetres. That line there, and we're going to cut that line there. So we've opened up the front. Now for ease in and out, we should take these down because they'll be pretty deep arms. Your choice really. If you want bucket seat comfort, take it down to about there. Like I say, ease of in and out, back it down about there. But either way, you have to cut down here so that you can bend these over. And if you're going to take it that far, cut that off. If you're not, just cut down these two and bend it round. I can tell you that was about half an hour's work on a sunny morning, and we've got our chair. It's surprisingly comfortable. It actually feels like a chair and not like a shopping trolley. Now this is 50 centimetres long, which is pretty standard. Somewhere between 50 and 55 centimetres is where you want a seat. And obviously I'm just going to sit in the sun for a little bit. But we made this like a chair like this, so that's one thing done. But then of course the inspiration for this was the tie, so we're going to see if it works as a wheelchair. Hey Luke! It's surprisingly comfortable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean seriously that.
Yeah.
Tell you what, a couple of pillows on that, you'd be absolutely golden.
You'd be asleep in the sun. Anyway, Grandad, are you feeling alright? Shall we take you down the seaside for some chips? So what I was thinking was we could combine the tricycle with the shopping trolley and make a real wheelchair. Okay, so here is the back end of the trike removed. Now, it took me 10 minutes to do that, okay? Now, I need to chop off those bits and weld them onto here, that's for sure, which is what I'm going to do next. But putting those two bits together makes something that's astonishingly usable. Anyway, let's chop those up and put it together. So they've been chopped off, and I used a bit of pine to cut this little half shape in because that'll fit on there. If we slide that in. You might think I planned this. I didn't. It all just fits, but there we go. I need to weld those on. Okay, there it is, all complete and welded together. The sharp-eyed amongst you will have noticed I put brake handles on, because remember, this has brakes, but it responds just like a wheelchair.
I'm having a bit of an obsession with 3D scanners. So of course it's like anything, there are many different products for many different people because everybody has something different that they want to achieve. So this is the Ferret Pro by Creality. Nice little machine, but it does need other things to make it work, but it's nice and compact. This one is the Revo Point Miracle, which is an all-in-one machine. So it very much depends what you want to do as to what a good machine is. But of course scanners have led me to that idea of wanting to scan the world because it's a fascinating place. And what really amazed me was a website called Scan the World. To be honest, Scan the World is a groundbreaking initiative that combines art, technology and accessibility and brings the world's cultural heritage to, well, the fingertips of people everywhere. It was developed by the cultural organisation My Mini Factory, and Scan the World is aiming to create a digital archive of 3D scans of sculptures, artefacts, historic monuments and technology from around the globe. At its core, Scan the World uses 3D scanning technology to capture detailed and accurate representations of cultural artefacts. It's a collaboration between individuals and museums and people who feel like posting these artefacts and these scans onto Scan the World. The scans are then available to the public through an open access platform, and you can download them, 3D print them, and explore those replicas. Scan the World has already amassed a huge collection of 3D scans covering a diverse range of artefacts and sculptures. The collection includes items from renowned museums, historical sites, cultural institutions, as well as contributions from individuals and local communities. The result is a growing repository that reflects the richness and diversity of our global cultural heritage. It's incredibly easy to use, and you can browse through the extensive catalogue searching for specific things, or you can just discover new items based on your interest. And you're encouraged to participate and contribute your own 3D scans to enrich the digital archive further. But Scan the World just isn't a digital archive. The whole idea is to promote the use of 3D printing technology to recreate physical replicas of the artefacts. Educational institutions, researchers and enthusiasts can find value in this because you can incorporate 3D printed replicas into lessons, and you can hands-on experience what that artifact is actually like. And we're physical creatures. Getting our hands onto something really helps you understand how that thing was made. To be honest, it's a remarkable fusion of technology and art. As it continues to grow, it holds the potential to revolutionise the way we perceive and interact with not only our legacy, but our innate creativity and inventiveness for the new things that we might come up with by looking back to look forward. If Scan the World is something you're not aware of, then I put a link in the description, and it is definitely something you should check out. It is just plain awesome how much it's got on there and how interesting it actually is.
It's in our nature to look at those great big things that inspire awe. It's quite rare for us to look at something and find the awe within, and of course that's sometimes what's needed. Otherwise things get lost. And it's this kind of architectural detail that I'm sort of on about that's maybe going to get missed, because here we are at the King's Hall in Herne Bay, and around the corner we have this water fountain to commemorate both King's Hall and Herne Bay. And right here is the heron, the symbol of the bay, the clock tower and the seafront, the church, and it's an awesome detail that you have to look for. And of course beautiful details like this. I've seen people spend a lot of time designing columns, and yet you could just scan this and incorporate it into your designs, and it's a great example of Victorian ironwork at its best.
So Scan the World is an incredible resource for 3D printers everywhere, but it doesn't obviate the need for scanning those things around you, whether large or small, and contributing them to Scan the World. We'll build a library of things that can get lost over time, which will help us remember the past, love the present, and create a future, as we're able to build on what went before. I, for one, will be contributing my scans, and whatever you choose to do, it's certainly worth checking it out.
Public works of art, they're probably not something we think about much, but when we do think about them, I guess it's to be annoyed by them. But public works of art make a huge difference to our world. Imagine, if you could, a world without public art. It would be very drab indeed. And in the UK there are something like 18,000 individual pieces of artwork set out for the public to enjoy. And there is a catalogue of this called Art UK.
It truly is an astounding resource. Started in 2003, it's digitised more than 3,000 paintings, sculptures and other works of art by more than 53,000 artists all across the UK. It has its own website, searchable catalogue and YouTube channel, and has helped the UK to become the first country in the world to offer a digital collection of publicly owned sculpture. Art UK aimed to have at least 150,000 sculptures viewable by the end of 2020, but as of early 2023 the number of sculptures listed is just over 50,000, of which over 13,500 are outdoor public sculptures and monuments from the last 1,000 years. This is the entry for the Mahatma Gandhi statue in Parliament Square, which was unveiled in 2015. It's the work of Philip Jackson, and it's a bronze 9 feet tall. Gandhi came to England in the early 20th century to study law, but found his calling in campaigning for rights of the Indian poor and for Indians' independence from what was then the British Empire. The statue shows him standing bare-legged, wearing his preferred style of clothing, a loincloth and shawl. Jackson said he was inspired by the photographs of the civil rights leader outside 10 Downing Street, where he met the then Prime Minister, Ramsay MacDonald, on a visit in 1931. The irony here is that the statue stands amongst the defenders of the British Empire, including Churchill, who opposed Indian independence. The placement of the statue is seen as proof of how much England itself has moved away from Churchill's views, and to my mind, it is an iconic piece of work. Of course, I have this, which is the Creality Ferret Pro, and it's sent to me by Creality to review, and of course we took this down to the seaside and scanned a sculpture of Amy Johnson, which wasn't particularly large. What I plan to do is scan Gandhi, and of course that is a massive sculpture, so it should be an interesting challenge as to whether the Creality will do it or not. So I went through the basics of how to use the scanner in video 2172, and I scanned this in 10 different scans and stitched it all together, but there is our model of Gandhi. Once I scanned it, I put it into 3D Builder to repair any faults I might have had, and then exported it as an STL file so we could 3D print it. So all we have to do now is load that up into Cura and get a 3D print done. There it is, all finished and printed off. Now I have put the link to this model in the description, and it's on Thingiverse for anybody who wants it. But the reason I've done it is because I think a big sculpture like that, to get it scanned and printed, is pretty much a challenge, and it's showing the versatility of the Creality scanner, which I've been having a bit of fun with. Now my intention is not to wander around the whole of the UK scanning sculptures, although I'm a little bit tempted to do that. I'm just showing that the Creality can manage these really big things and bring them down to sort of this size, no problem at all, because the world is littered with all kinds of inspirations for designs that are already pre-made. And I'm thinking here things like the entrances to the Paris Metro. It's got some beautiful Art Nouveau designs, could equally be scanned and imported, as could lots and lots of other things. So for getting something to print, for getting something in there that you can actually use in your own designs, this scanner is certainly proving to be extremely useful. Hi everybody, so in video 2150 we talked about a battery that could arguably last forever, and that battery is a Zamboni pile, and since 1840 it's been ringing a bell in Oxford, the famous Oxford bell at Clarendon. Now there is an argument about how it actually works. Some people say it's electrostatic, and some people say that it's just very, very slow corrosion because the amount of energy used to ring the bell is very tiny. And either could be true because nobody's dissected it to have a look, and although it's been running since 1840, that doesn't mean it will run forever. So either argument has the possibility of being true. There is, however, another kind of forever battery that was invented by Carpen, and it's been running for about 60 years or so. The battery named after him is called the Carpen Pile, and it's housed in the National Technical Museum in Romania. And it was put together in 1950, and it consists of two series connected electrical piles that move a small motor. The motor moves a blade that's connected to a switch, and with every half rotation, the blade opens the circuit and closes at the start of the second half of the rotation. The blade's rotation time has been calculated so that the piles have time to recharge, and then they can rebuild their polarity during the time the circuit is open. It uses platinum gold electrodes, and there is no detectable corrosion effect happening. Now, although the original cell uses gold, platinum and sulfuric acid, there is a patent. It's a French patent, FR 577087, and in that patent, 3 arrangements are shown for the carbon cell. And they use fairly innocuous ingredients, including all carbon-carbon version, so I thought I'd give it a go. So I quickly knocked up a Type 3 cell using graphite foil and sodium carbonate, which is washing soda. I put it across a 10 ohm resistor, and you can see the voltage being read there. With a 10 ohm load and a 0.21 volt reading, it means we're getting about 21 milliamps being generated. So something is happening, and it's all a bit of a mystery as to what, until the arrival of this Chinese paper. And of course that got me thinking, so I thought I'd give that one a go. And here is my attempt at a replication. It's a fish tank filled with copper chloride solution and 10 sheets of graphite with copper as the electrodes. So the likelihood of that being galvanic, that is corrosion of the copper, is minute, and in the paper they went to considerable effort to show that it wasn't galvanic corrosion, and they managed to light an LED lamp across it. And my advice, if you have more questions about it, well, I've given you the link to the paper. Have a jolly good read. It is a fascinating read. So if you do read the paper, what you'll find is that the Chinese argue that it's a thermal effect, because of course movement and heat are the same thing. The hotter something gets, all it means is that the molecules are moving that much quicker. And as they move, they're hitting the surface of the carbon, or rather the ions are hitting the surface of the carbon. And this is why it's important to have 2 different carbons, like Carpen said in his patent, because the conductivity changes. So when an ion hits the carbon, then the electron conductivity means that it goes through the outside of the circuit, and so we get a driving force or an EMF. Now, if that's true, then temperature should raise the voltage. So let's give that a go. Okay, so we've got it on a heat plate. It's actually aluminium chloride here. We've got a graphite electrode. We've connected it across a 10 ohm resistor. It's at 35 degrees C, and you can see it's reading 2.3 volts. So it's pulling real current. Now, without the temperature on, it began at 1.5 volts, and it's raised it to 2.3 volts as that electrolyte has warmed up on the hot plate. So at first sight, this might look like mucking around at nothing, but actually it's incredibly important, because what it means is that the carbon cell was real. It looks like the guy was onto something. And when you think about the research that's coming out, and here we're thinking about water droplets running across graphene creating charge. We're thinking about all carbon batteries that are coming out of Japan. We're thinking about the graphene generators where in sunlight and with a gas across the surface that they will generate coming out of Arkansas. There's a whole lot of very promising research on this coming out time and time again. So it looks like carbon was definitely onto something. Now you could argue that it's not actually a battery, that it's in fact a thermoelectric effect, so it's a thermal generator. And to a degree I can agree with that, but to another degree, depends what you think a battery actually is. If a battery is all about charge separation, then this mechanism of differential conductivity and thermal effects across a surface are charge separation. So I would say it's a grey area as to whether it's a battery or whether it's a generator. But the most important thing is it actually works, and of course that means there's a very promising avenue to look at in terms of generation that perhaps we're not looking at as well as we should be. The thing about storing gravity is it's really easy, it's really cheap, and it's really clean. There we go. I've just stored some gravity. Of course, the question now is what to do with it. To do that, I took an Archimedes screw, duplicated it and rotated it by 90 degrees to get this. Then that same duplication I did again and rotated it another 90 degrees, which gives me a 3-section. One more 90-degree section will give me my Archimedes screw, and that's my worm gear. And there it is put together, so if I twiddle that, the other one turns. That's, and back turns. That's awesome, actually. I had no idea if that was going to work, but indeed it does. And this is what we're after. It's a humming top. Now you're only going to find something like this in a really good traditional toy store like Kids Corner here in Herne Bay where I live. That is what we want. Okay, now we've got our top. We have to get it back to the studio, disassemble it and have a look at the mechanism. I'm pretty sure most people know how this works, but you do that, it spins like crazy. Now if we take this apart, we can have a look at it. When we get it apart, it's only 2 bits of steel, and in there is a slotted washer. This twisted bar pushes through the slotted washer. Because you're holding the bar, of course, all it can do is spin, and spin it does. Now this is the same mechanism that you'll find in twist and pump drills, and this is a really simple mechanism. Of course, I turned to Tinkercad and drew this up, but I didn't draw it up straight from scratch. I actually got some extra bits from other places and made modifications to them because sometimes that's just the easiest thing to do. Now, OT Vinta, and I've used them a couple of times, are doing this spinning top, and at the heart of it is a mechanism that we want, which is right here. It's a ratchet mechanism. So I extracted that mechanism, got rid of the ball top, and created a cage for it to sit in. That cage, I did some of the bits on it, but other bits were available. For instance, these pillars were on Tinkercad, and Thingiverse, and I grabbed them from Thingiverse and sized them to what I wanted. And of course, I did the same with these great feet that I just love. Again, they're on Thingiverse, and I just grabbed them and used them. So some bits I've grabbed and used, some bits I've adapted from what's already been done, and some bits I've drawn up myself. Now, that's a good way of getting a model off the ground really, really quickly. So it puts together really easily, and that's how it puts together. Now in there is a thrust bearing at 47 by 25, and it sits there because that is the main bit that's going to rotate. You can see it's got holes in it to take the magnets, and that sits nicely on that thrust bearing, so when we spin it, it spins nice and freely. Now the drive mechanism is this clutch plate here, and the only thing to remember is to get these the right way around. When you look at this clutch plate, you'll see a little sort of red projection, and the green projection goes onto the red because that's the way the clutch works. And then drop another identical thrust bearing into the recess in the center, and then we can put the clutch plate in. And there we go, like that. Now, in order to get that flywheel effect, what I've got here is a 2.5 kilo barbell, and that sits on top there and fits directly on there, and that forms the flywheel portion. Then we can shove the handle in and give it a go. Okay, so I've put a serpentine coil around it, and to make these I put a link at the end of this video to the serpentine coil making video, and then in the carrier what we've got are some 20mm magnets. They're 20mm by 4.5mm, and they are arranged north, south, north, south, north, south. That drops in there. Then we've got a cap that goes on here. That then goes on top there. And our pump handle goes in. Then we have to put that stop on the bottom, because when you pull that up, you don't want to be pulling it out all of the time. So put the stop on the bottom and either glue it or screw it in. Okay, so clearly a child would know how to use this. So I'm going to pump it up and down, and we're going to get a volt reading. And for that, we've got Luke. The Earth has a conservative field. What that means is if I expend energy dragging this pebble up the hill, then I get exactly the same energy out if I just drop it. Of course, we use this principle all of the time. I mean, that's exactly what hydro energy is. We don't carry the rock, but it's the same principle, and it's the same principle in tidal energy. And this works because Every time I move an object, I've actually transferred energy into it. And of course I can get the energy back out by letting it go. And that's exactly what's happening. Now I made a medium version at 60 millimeters long, and I've printed 10 of those because they will glue together to make a nice twist spiral that's actually quite long. And of course you can change that length as much as you want. The only other thing we really need is this section and the ratchet section. This section is a rider. It's actually just a ring with 4 indents in it that are big enough to take 12mm ball bearings, and they squeeze in there quite tightly and the ring will hold those in place. And that ring fits on the twist like that, and if I let that go, of course it drops, and as it drops it will spin. Equally, if I hold that still and drop that, that will drop, but in that case, because this is still, that will spin. And what we're going to do is connect that to a new ratchet mechanism there and glue all of these together to make one long spiral. When you fix them all together, that's what you get. Now I just glued these with super glue because it's a prototype, and there is the adapted ratchet mechanism which is going to sit in there. So all we need to do with this is put on the ratchet teeth, attach this to here, and we're pretty much ready to go. So there's the ratchet teeth to give that a spin. There we go, works a treat. Now on here we need a stabilising weight because this acts like a flywheel, and I've got a small 1.25 kilogram barbell weight which sits on there like that rather neatly, and I've put a little bit of super glue on there to hold that centred. There we go, and now if we give that a spin, it'll continue to spin. We're ready now to put that on. So to test this, I put 4 of them on because obviously we can make this as high as we like, but as it gets taller than the base that's supporting it, it's going to start to wobble. And so what we need are guide rails, and the guide rails will help as it gets very much taller. And here's my weight, and I've got the ring at the bottom there, and all we're actually going to do is put that on there and drop it. As it drops, it should spin this, and we'll get a little bit of freewheel effect here. And of course we've got it attached to a meter, so we'll get some generation out of it. But let's give it a go and see if it actually works just in this position here. Okay, so keep your eye on that meter. So that's as far as I got with that, and to be honest, this video has been a bit of an omnibus of previous videos I've done, but the next bit I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Jamie Owens of Hinkley Parks Primary School in Hinkley. He sent me this video which I thought was an absolute work of genius. So I've included the video here because when I looked back for it, I actually had an enormous amount of difficulty finding it, and I thought that this was such a genius idea that it really didn't want to get lost. And I wanted to show everybody this idea because I think this is the very next step to take the work that we've been doing and create an actual machine that will produce energy and be incredibly efficient. It was created by the students of the Technological University of the Philippines as an emergency generator, and is a portable gravity-powered backup power supply. If you look at it, it contains all of the elements that we've talked about in this video. We have a worm gear being driven by a falling weight, and that drives a generator at the bottom to produce electrical output. The main differences are it's in a cage to make sure that it only goes one direction, and here comes the true genius of it. When the weight reaches the bottom, you turn the crank handle to rotate the cage so the weight is back up at the top and free to fall again. True genius in action. Now normally I would have built that before doing a video on it, but I thought it was so cool and so well done by the students that it was worth sharing as is, because I don't think it's got as much exposure as it deserves. It deserves to be viral. It's stunning in terms of its engineering and its practical applicability. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much again, James, for letting me know about that. And please do remember to like and subscribe.